of the Pirelli Indonesian round. That postponement has forced the cancellation of the Superpole race, and a daunting task for Jonathan Rea has become an ominous one. 12 points is the most ever made up over a two-race season finale. Rea trails Toprak Razgatlioglu by 30. Steve English alongside me, 2 fifth places in 2 races today, or a second place here this morning will be enough for Razgatlioglu to become the 2021 world champion.
Yeah, the second place will give him the title on the countback of feature-length race victories, and obviously for Toprak, that has to be the focus. But the one thing we've seen all the way through this weekend's action, all the way through this season, is Toprak just wants to win in style. He wants to go out and win as many races as possible. It's going to be interesting to see what Yamaha have done this morning to try and talk him into taking a little bit of a conservative approach. It will go against Toprak's inner instincts, but let's wait and see what happens over 21 laps.
Well, they always say you need a little bit of luck to be world champion, and Toprak, I would suggest, is the main beneficiary of yesterday's postponement. Jonathan Rea would have taken a wet race as an opportunity to bank big points, plus the loss of the Superpole race as well. That reduces his window for gains, mathematically speaking, and Toprak's task has just got a little bit easier. Yesterday we said he needed 33 points from 3 races to become champion. Now he only needs 20 points from 2. Yeah,
the one thing for Toprak is he's been the rider that's had the bad luck through the course of this season. He's had mechanical issues. He hasn't put a foot wrong on track all the way through this season. Even in practice and qualifying, in all the races, he's been faultless, and that's why he's in that championship leading position. Jonathan Rea, on the other hand, his misfortune has been, unfortunately for Jonathan, a lot of his own doing with crashes in races.
Weather was the talking point here yesterday afternoon. It has been overnight and this morning.
Yeah, the weather has been the big talking point. Obviously, after yesterday's monsoon, everyone's looking to the skies at all times. Walking over to the commentary box about 5 minutes ago, it was raining in the paddock, but as you can see from these pictures with Toprak, Keenan Safoglu and Phil Marin in pit lane, it's not raining any longer. So all the riders, all the teams, they've got some decisions to make.
What a season it has been for Toprak Razgatlioglu, who trailed by 35 points after Estoril, again by 37 after Assen, and each time he's responded emphatically to recover the lead. For the last 3 rounds, it's been Rea behind in the points and chasing.
Yeah, Rea's been doing the chasing, and for Toprak, he's looked cool and calm all the way through this season. The battle between these two riders this year has been fierce on track. The championship points has been one thing, but all the way through the season, they've been bar to bar. They've been putting tyres on one another. They've really attacked each other. If you think back to the Catalan Superpole race, that was an amazing race between Razgatlioglu and Rea. You think back to Navarro and lots of other races all the way through this season. It's been a battle on track unlike any I've seen.
Jonathan Rea has never trailed into the last round in any of his 6 championship-winning seasons so far. In 4 of those 6, he'd sealed the deal with 2 rounds to spare. Uncharted territory, as I say, for Jonathan Rea, and indeed, as you've just said, for Superbikes as a whole. This really has been an incredible season.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable all the way through this year. If you think back to the battles we've seen between Razgatlioglu, Rea, and Scott Redding as well, we've seen some fantastic racing from all of those guys. We've seen a lot of respect from each of them on the racetrack. Obviously enough between Rea and Razgatlioglu. I think both of them have understood they race in very similar ways. If there's half a gap, you're taking it. Scott Redding, it's taken him a bit of time to adjust and adapt to that style over the Argentine round. We did see Scott Redding, though, willing to put those battles and those overtaking moves on riders as well.
Yes, and he effectively acts as the spoiler over the course of this weekend. He can make points differences bigger or smaller depending on which position he finishes. Redding no longer a championship challenger. A race 1-4 from pole position in Argentina saw to that, but realistically his hopes were dented frankly much earlier on in the season. Had he matched Toprak at Donington Park in Manicourt, he'd actually be the championship leader now. Those 2 rounds proving costly for him.
Yeah, and if you think back to Donington, was one of those real costly rounds. We've seen it from Scott over the course of this year. The inconsistencies for the Ducati have come to the fore. When that bike is working well, it's still arguably the best package on the grid. That's why so much the paddock are worried about Alvaro Bautista being back on that bike next year.
And we catch up with Bautista just at the right moment, almost as if you planned that, Steve. Alvaro Bautista in what is his final weekend on board Honda machinery, and I suspect that he will be relieved about that as much as anything. Bautista, though, Honda have looked decent here so far in the build-up.
Yeah, Honda's made progress through the course this year. It's been a very tough season for them, but with Bautista, they've had a couple of podiums. With Leon Haslam, they're front row stars. They've made progress, just not quite enough to keep the likes of Alvaro Bautista on that bike. easy to understand why Alvaro wants to be back in the Ducati. But what's going to be interesting for next year is to see how that team adapts to 2 young rookie riders, a real change in philosophy for Honda next season.
Yes, Iker Lecuona will be on board that Honda machinery, along with Xavi Vierge for the 2022 campaign. But the focus really on rounding out 2021. We've got the World Championship to settle. We've got the Manufacturers Championship to settle over the 2 races now here today. We've also got to determine the Independent Riders Award here over the course of today. 14 points for this man, Garrett Gerloff, to defend against Axel Bassani. Steve, at one stage that gap was 54 points. GRT Yamaha already guaranteed the Independent Teams Award, one of a pair of 2-bike entries, and Gerloff their top scorer.
Yeah, season of 2 halves for Garrett Gerloff, but good to see him finishing the season strong. He's had good pace at different times over the last few rounds, especially at the end of races. So hopefully in today's running we're able to see the Garrett Gerloff to the fore that we saw in the early rounds this season. He's a fast rider, he's very talented, warranted the jump into a MotoGP bike earlier in the season at Assen as well for the Dutch TT, but certainly from that point onwards it has been a much more difficult season for Gerloff. The talent's all there. Hopefully this is the beginning of that return to form for Gerloff. It's a big winter for him.
Stunning setting here in Lombok. The overhead pictures prove that.
Yeah, unbelievable. This is unlike anywhere we've been for a very long time. First time we're in Indonesia since the late 90s, and it's great to have the racetrack right down beside the beach. There's a couple of corners here down to turn 10. You actually look straight out over the ocean here as well. It's a real beautiful place for a racetrack.
Just 30 points over 35 races have separated the top 2 in the 2021 World Championship. As you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, 28 podiums, 3 retirements as well apiece. Absolutely nothing to choose between these 2 men. But as you said previously, Steve, 13 wins to 11 in favour of Toprak Razgatlioglu, and more importantly, 11 to 5 in feature-length races. That means if we do get a tie on points, count back would give the title to Razgatlioglu. At the moment, everything suggests that this title is Razgatlioglu's to lose.
Yeah, it really is, and there's a lot of pressure on Toprak to get across the line. That's where it's been interesting to go down into the Yamaha pit box at times this weekend. There's been some nervous faces, there's been tension down there. All Toprak's done is try and relieve that tension. He's out there making jokes, he's just playing up to the camera, he's doing all the things that he will try to do to make sure that the team don't feel that pressure. Toprak wants to get this championship done as much as anyone else within Yamaha. He also knows that he's going to get plenty of more opportunities in all likelihood to win world championships, but you want to get it done now, get that monkey off your back.
It's also worth mentioning that as a result of the cancellation of the Super Pole race, the grid positions will now be the same for both feature-length races, which again works in Toprak's favour after he secured a 3rd pole position in 4 rounds here yesterday.
Yeah, it works in Toprak's favour to have that. Obviously enough, what we've seen over the course of this season is Toprak's always been able to keep himself at the front of the field, even in the Super Pole races, qualify well for race 2. But it is a much simpler race day for Toprak today compared to what we could have had.
Yes, as we prepare to open pit lane and build up to the race here this morning. Unfortunately, we are without both Alex Lowes and Leon Haslam for Sunday here at the Indonesian round. Lowes suffering further damage to his injured shoulder in what was a startling FP3 crash, and Leon Haslam failing in his bid to return following surgery between late season flyaways.
Yeah, I had a quick chat with Lowes yesterday just about that injury, and shame for him, as he said, it seems that almost every time he's fallen this season he's picked that forces riders to sit out, and we've seen that for Lowes different times this season. It really does just show how serious it can be.
Real shame for Leon Haslam in particular. We know Alex Lowes is back with KRT for next season, and in his comments after it was announced that he wouldn't be able to continue this weekend, he was already turning his focus to next year and making sure that he's fully fit for winter testing and of course for the start of next season. For Leon Haslam, of course, it's a departure from Honda at the end of this campaign, more than likely a departure from the World SBK paddock as well, and one of the most experienced men in this category of all time. If that does turn out to be his final World SBK weekend, that would be a shame for him.
Yeah, he's going to be probably moving back to BSB on a Kawasaki, could potentially be in Endurance World Championship action as well, and that'll be interesting to see how that fits in with Kawasaki as well. Obviously Kawasaki with their Suzuka 8-hour program, that comes from the Kawasaki World SBK team. Be interesting to see if Haslam, a former rider for that team, is involved in that project in any way.
Number 15, Oliver Koenig, you just caught a glimpse of at the back of the shot, making his way around. A World Superbike debut for him this weekend, and he's made significant improvements over the course of the weekend, actually beginning to close down the back of the pack, as it were, having been a significant margin away in the very first free practice sessions. conditions. A massive step forward from Supersport 300, of course, to jump up to the Premier class in the World SBK.
Full time. He has had some big bike experience in the Endurance World Championship, but we'll wait and see where he goes for next year.
Yes, only 0.6 of a second away from Tito Rabat in the Superpole session here yesterday. That's bad news for Rabat, frankly, but it does also show that Koenig is getting there or thereabouts on towards the tail of the field. 18 rider entry, so a little bit of attrition, and he could be a point scorer in his debut weekend as well. At the other end of his career is this man, Chaz Davies. It's a final weekend for him in the Superbike World Championship before retirement from the series. Go 11 have already announced Philip Ertl as the man who will replace him in 2022. But a long and illustrious career as far as Chaz Davies is concerned.
Yeah, Chaz tweeted earlier in the week, 27 years since he started his racing career back in Wales, so it's been a long road for him, and I think it's easy to forget that it's not just the time you spend in World Championship action, it's the time to get to that point as well. And Davis has put in the hard yards. He's going to have earned the beer tonight. He's at the top, also coincided with Jonathan Ray's years at the top as well, because Chaz could easily have picked up a World Championship or two to go with his Supersport World crown.
So, what are the chances of Toprak Razgatlioglu claiming the title with a race to spare? Well, you'd have to say good. A top 2 finish would do it, as I said previously, and Toprak has finished inside the top 2 in 60% of races in 2021. It is the second consecutive season that we've gone down to a last round decider. Last season, though, Jonathan Ray only needed 3 points from the final round to seal the title. This season, you fancy he needs a miracle.
Yeah, and for Ray, the miracle might come in the form of a little bit of rain in the next 15 minutes as well. We did have a few spits of rain around about 20 minutes ago here in Indonesia, so we'll wait and see if that changes at all. It did get very bright momentarily. Now it's gotten a little bit darker. The clouds starting to come in again. We're going to be keeping our eyes on the skies.
We said it multiple times before this weekend even got underway. The only way that Jonathan Ray could make up that kind of points margin, 30 points, was if misfortune befell Toprak, or if we had weather conditions that favoured Ray more than the current series leader.
Yeah, and I think a few spots of rain could bring in that little bit of randomness to the proceedings. Obviously enough, you'd expect Toprak to be really strong in dry conditions. But speaking to the riders after the morning warm-up session, Garrett Gerloff said that if you were offline at all during the morning warm-up session, there was absolutely no grip out there. So that's going to be one of the key things. If you're able to try and make some moves, you're not going to be able to venture too far off the racing line.
History, though, is against Jonathan Ray. The Superbike points leader has only changed at the final round on 6 occasions during this championship's history. The largest margin made up ever has been 12 points by Sylvain Guintoli back in 2014. So Ray will have to make more history if he's to become world champion again this afternoon. Look at the grid then. The front row featuring the top 3 in the championship standings, and in their pecking order, Toprak Razgatlioglu on pole. He's outscored Jonathan Ray in 6 of the last 7 rounds. He's won 5 of the last 8 races. He could be world champion as early as today. 25 points, of course, available this afternoon, and a 30-point lead. So a very realistic chance of taking the title as early as this morning.
Yeah, and certainly for Toprak, you can see down there on the grid with Keenan Sofoglu. Keenan, a 5-times world champion, and probably the best mentor Toprak could have hoped for, to give him that bit of experience, give him that bit of knowledge about what it takes to get across the line. Once you're on the bike, though, it's up to Toprak to get it done. He's looked so calm all the way through this weekend, really relaxed. You'd expect him to be able to get it done, and he could easily do it in race 1.
Razgatlioglu, the championship leader since the end of the Catalonia round, and he took the lead of the championship by just a single point at that stage. He's steadily increased that margin since then. 19 points he gained in Jerez, 4 points in Portimao, and 6 in San Juan. Jonathan Ray certainly has been digging in, particularly last time out. He lines up from P2, having already taken the championship lead back from Toprak Razgatlioglu twice this season. Can he do it a third time? 4 consecutive podiums to his name. Only one of them, though, a win. Just 3 victories in the last 7 rounds. It's going to take something very special.
Yeah, from that form in the Netherlands, whenever he was able to pick up the treble victory in Assen, it really has been tough going since then for Jonathan Ray. You could see him there on the grid, steely-eyed determination there. He's really focused on the job at hand. Doesn't want to have too many distractions on the grid, so certainly for Kawasaki, they'll be focused up on making sure that Ray's got all of his boxes ticked. 15 minutes to go though, so plenty still can change. As you can see in the skies in the background, there are still those clouds in the air.
200th Superbike start with Kawasaki today for Jonathan Rea, in the middle of the front row between Toprak Razgatlioglu and the man on the outside of him, Scott Redding, who could yet have some say in the destination of this 2021 world title. The Ducati man completing the front row of the grid, and as we said previously, real chance that he could act as a spoiler. Our most recent race winner, who took race 2 in San Juan 5 weeks ago, 10 podiums in the last 12 races. He has been the only rider consistently able to fight with Rea and Razgatlioglu in 2021. 187 points up on teammate Michael Ruben Rinaldi behind Scott Redding, so guaranteed at least a bronze to add to a silver from 2020. 36 points behind Jonathan Rea for second, and set for his final weekend on board Ducati machinery.
Yeah.
Anthony, let's head down to you on the grid.
Thanks, Alex. Just here with Scott Redding now, just on your screen. Obviously, conditions will change throughout the race, to be expected. But right now, what do you see on the sighting lap?
Dry, mate. It was dry, no real drops at the moment. So, but you know, we saw yesterday that can change by a click of a finger. So, get out and just deal with the situation when you get to it. So that's where we're at the moment.
Offline this morning, it seemed like it might be a bit more difficult there.
Is that sorry?
Offline this morning in the warm-up seemed like a bit more difficult conditions.
Yeah, it was a bit dirty from yesterday, but you know, we've cleaned it up now, so ready to go.
Thanks, good luck.
Thank you.
Scott Redding, as I said, in his final appearance with Ducati before a switch to BMW in 2022.
Yeah, and you can hear from Scott there that the clean-up has gone through. We did see in the Supersport class that they were right down to lap record pace as well in the warm-up session, so track was in good condition by the end of the morning warm-up sessions.
Second row of the grid, Garrett Gerloff, Andrea Locatelli and Tom Sykes. Gerloff, 10 consecutive top 10 finishes since his pre-race crash at the Catalonia round. The first time he's managed such a run. It's also now 23 races without a podium, so his reliability has come at the expense of those big front-running performances.
Yeah, and it's going to be key to see how he can get on in these 2 races today. He'll obviously want to get himself back onto the podium, give himself some momentum heading into the off-season.
Alongside him, the middle of the second row is Andrea Locatelli, of course, fellow Yamaha stablemate. 3 Yamahas in the top 5 positions on the grid, and Locatelli, Superbike's top rookie in 2021, and unsurprisingly so after he's had something of a mid-season surge. Completing the second row of the grid, Tom Sykes, back in the saddle for the first time since Barcelona, suffered a severe concussion that forced him to miss the last 3 rounds. He was 7th in the standings before that trip to the Catalan capital. Still has a chance of taking 10th overall from Alvaro Bautista.
Yeah, and for Tom Sykes, there is rumours around the paddock that he might be able to find the seat for next year, maybe a potential return to a Kawasaki for next year, and that would be good to see. Tom obviously still has that turn of speed over a single lap. He's actually done a decent job through the course of this season before that Catalan crash, and he's made a big step forward with the BMW compared to the last couple of years, but we'll wait and see what happens for his future.
Yes, midway through this season, still headed teammate Michael van der Mark on BMW machinery. Van der Mark in the last 4 or so rounds has been able to pull ahead. Finally, we get to catch up with Andrea Locatelli, and a man who by the end of the weekend in Manicourt, with 12 consecutive top 5 finishes, had moved into 4th in the championship, and at that stage you would have bet on him keeping it, but he struggled in Barcelona and San Juan. He actually trails by 8 points now. Yeah,
Rocket Man glasses on the grid. He's going to need a rocket start from the middle of the second row, but Locatelli's impressed everyone all the way through this season. 5th in the championship standings. He's got the chance of moving into 4th today. He's quite far ahead of Michael Ruben Rinaldi on the grid, so he might be able to make up some of those points gaps. Yes,
and of course it will be 2 feature-length races from the same grid position for Michael Ruben Rinaldi, all the way down in 14th. An awful lot of work to do. The third row of the grid, Axel Bassani, Alvaro Bautista and Michael van der Mark. This is Bassani, 9th in the championship and second best ranked rookie to Andrea Locatelli. Few would have predicted that before this season got underway. Another big scoring weekend in San Juan last time out, second only to his efforts in Barcelona. That's now 11 consecutive races inside the top 10 for Axel Bassani. Alongside him, Alvaro Bautista and Michael van der Mark, but Bassani has been impressive.
Yeah, Bassani's been very impressive all the way through this season. He was a good Supersport rider, but what he's been able to do in the Superbike this year surprised a lot of people, made a big step forward on it. That Ducati's a really good package. He's been able to get the most out of it at a few rounds. Obviously, Misano, Catalunya, the podium, they've been some of the highlights.
See these shots of the top 2 on the grid. It reminds you just how close they are to one another on the line.
They've been close to each other all the way through this season. There's been a real closely matched battle on track in the championship points. It has been the advantage Razgatlioglu for the second half of this season, but he's done a great job to overturn that momentum that Ray had in the early season rounds.
Alvaro Bautista, 3 race crashes in the last 2 rounds. He scored just 11 points since his famous Jerez podium, leaving him back down in 10th overall. This is his 60th race with Honda, chapter he'll be keen to see the end of. He plots his immediate return to Ducati machinery.
Yeah, certainly for Alvaro the last couple of years haven't gone according to plan. We've seen a lot of crashes from him. A lot of that comes from the fact that Bautista willing to take risks just to try and get himself onto the podium, and he wasn't settling for decent points paying finishes. He wanted to make that extra step.
Happy 37th to Alvaro Bautista.
Yeah, and for Bautista, 37 today, and you can see the cake. He'll be hoping to have a little bit more to celebrate by the end of today, because he could be able to spring a bit of a surprise. He's always able to make that super soft compound tyre work a little bit easier than some of the other riders around him. We'll see if that has an impact during the race.
Completing the 3rd row of the grid will be Michael van der Mark from 9th position. A little bit of a weather watch. The ponchos are out, and it looks as though we must have a few sprinklings of rain in the grandstands.
Yeah, we did see on the safety cars the windscreen wipers were going off. They'll be automated for a bit of rain on the windscreen, so there is a few spots in the air once again, only 7 minutes before the start of the race.
And you can see that on the camera lens as well, the fogging on the outside of the lens as we prepare for this 21-lap race. Michael van der Mark, P9, as I said, hasn't been out of the top 6 in any of the last 5 races. A run started with his brilliant wet weather victory in Portimao. He's 23 points ahead of Alex Lowe's and Garrett Gerloff for 6th in the standings. He was only 1 place higher on Yamaha machinery last year.
Yeah, and certainly for Van der Mark, it's been a tough season. Obviously, the win in Portimao, the highlight for him and for BMW. But overall, I think he would have expected a little bit more with that all-new package. But you're going to have to wait and see what they can do over the winter to see if they're able to find a more consistent package to bring that fight to the leading 3. Big problem with all the manufacturers is Ducati, Kawasaki and Yamaha have been so consistent.
Tati Mercado, who's patience with MIE Honda, who missed 3 rounds earlier on in this season, has certainly been rewarded. A contract extension for him for 2022. Had a strong end to the European season in Portimao. His home round in Argentina last month was one to forget. Bounced back very nicely indeed with his best Super Bowl performance in 4 years. Tati Mercado, who lines up on the 4th row of the grid, and he is set to be joined by a teammate for next season, Hafiz Shireen, who will certainly provide a good benchmark. Tati Mercado on row number 4, alongside him Chaz Davies and Christophe Pinson, behind Isaac Vinales, as well as Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Samuele Cavalieri, and then the back row of the grid, Kota Nazane, Tito Rabat and Oliver Koenig. We'll continue on through the order, 18 riders in total. Of course, inevitably our focus on the top 2 in the championship, who are the 2 riders who start on the very front of the grid. But plenty of stories further back down the order, including that of Chaz Davies, who made his return from 2 fractured ribs in Argentina, was still in some pain and also lacking in race fitness. Over 4 weeks later, he's bidding still for that 100th Superbike podium, his last all the way back in Estoril. And would certainly be a fitting way for him to sign off from the championship at the end of this season if he can manage it. We did see Loris Baz manage to pick up podiums on board that Go 11 machinery as well, so hopefully Chaz Davies is able to make an impression. It would be good to see him sign off with that last podium.
Yeah, hopefully Chaz is able to have a good finish to his World SBK career. Obviously it's been a battle for him to get himself back to fitness, nowhere near full fitness when he returned in Argentina, and hopefully we'll be able to see him have something to smile about at the end of today's running.
Completing the 4th row of the grid, it will be Christophe Pinson, the number 23 Yamaha. A couple of strong showings actually during the triple header. Hasn't had too much consistency to his results though, and failed to score entirely at the Argentinian round last time out. One of my favourite shots, the focus shot between Toprak Razgatlioglu and Jonathan Ray there in the top 2 positions.
Yeah, and you can see for Toprak just readying himself on the grid, 4 minutes until the start of this race, and he gets a little bit of good luck there from a few of the Yamaha personnel. You can see Colombo there on the grid just offering him one last bit of advice, and now for all of those leading riders, they're going to be keeping one eye on the skies. They've all made their tyre choice now, and it's going to be interesting to see if people go a little bit conservative. Obviously the rain that's overnight and washing the track clean, that's going to make it where it's going to be quite harsh on some of the tyres. Some riders might opt for that harder tyre, the SC0 tyre, whereas some riders that might need to find a little bit of performance might take a bit of a gamble, go for the X tyre.
Drops of rain in Sector 1 appear on our information screen, our output here, and now it's immediately followed by drops of rain in Sector 4, and this is how it started yesterday, remember, with that heavy rain coming down in the first and fourth sector and all the way along the start-finish straight before we got the deluge that then forced the postponement of race number 1. But we're finally ready to get back up and running for a second time of asking 18 riders in total, but I tell you what, it may be that over the course of the next hour or so, we're only focusing on 2. For the first time since its inaugural season, the Motul FIM Superbike World Championship title will be settled at a brand new venue, and it is here at the Mandalika International Circuit. And we've just had information, firstly, that there were drops of rain appearing in sectors 1 and 4, and now that this start is going to be delayed as a result of the rain. So we're not going to get started until presumably the conditions stabilise one way or the other, either a wet race or a dry one.
Yeah, a bit inevitable once the rain starts to come in so close to the start, everyone out there on slick tyres. And unfortunately, we're going to have a little bit of a delay until we're able to see exactly what to do. So we'll wait and see how long that delay will be for. All the riders are going to do their best just to keep as dry as they can on the grid. You can see there for Jonathan Rea, he wants to get going because he knows in the changeable conditions, that's always been one of his fortes.
Yes, and the discussion yesterday as well was around the fact that everything seemed to be going against Jonathan Rea, not getting to race in wet conditions against Toprak, then not getting to have the Superpole race where he has generally dominated over the course of 2021. He'll feel at the moment that the world is against him. He would have wanted to just get started there and to try and put Razgatlioglu under some pressure. Yeah,
you can see the frustration for him, and now for Phil Marin there, just telling Toprak just to keep focused on the grid and just wait and see when we're going to be able to get this race started. But certainly for Jonathan Rea, he wanted to go out there. He wanted to be able to try and take the fight to Toprak. He knew that his best chance of being able to force something might have been in these changeable conditions. What we've seen from Toprak is in the stable conditions of full wet conditions, he's actually been quite strong this year. The changeable conditions, though, can always throw a few spanners in the works.
It does feel unusual to have a delayed start with only drops of rain at the moment appearing, but clearly the decision is being made to ensure that the conditions are stable at very least before racing gets underway.
Yeah, and I think it's not too much of a surprise to see them make that delay, but we'll wait and see what the weather does. If we end up with a little bit more rain or if we end up in these similar conditions, what is going to be key is that the riders are going to have to make a decision on which tyre to use. So they'll want more rain to come down to make it a wet track, maybe go out in the intermediates. Given what we saw yesterday, full wets might be the best option, and then make a decision on what to do. They obviously don't want to be in a position where you're out there on completely the wrong tyres, out in slicks, and then it starts to really hammer down. So probably the right decision just to have that bit of a delay.
And what they don't want most of all, Toprak, Razgatlioglu and Jonathan Rea, is to be on split strategies, one on one tyre and one on the other. That's particularly what Toprak won't want.
Yeah, and everyone's going to be keeping an eye on what everyone else is doing, seeing if there's a change of tyres, and if anyone does decide to opt from their slicks, and you could easily have a bit of a double bluff in a situation like that as well. Well,
we'll wait for confirmation to come in here as to what we will be doing in terms of the new schedule. You can see along the bottom of your screen weather conditions, drops of rain in the first and the fourth sector have caused a slight delay to the scheduled start. Of course, we have got to be mindful that we've got a fair schedule to get through here today, and that when I looked at the weather forecast ahead of today's action, I couldn't find the island of Lombok, and the reason is it was shrouded, let's say, in the wet weather that's supposed to be coming later on this afternoon. From 2 p.m. onwards, Lombok is rain.
Yeah, and it's a big island as well. There's 3.5 million people on this island, so it's not a small part of Indonesia, and it does look like it's going to get covered over the course of today. So certainly that's where it's really critical for these guys to be able to get out for race one and see what happens. But certainly it is going to be a wet day at some stage today. Hopefully we're able to get this race underway pretty soon and see what happens in that championship battle.
Yes, I really do hope that we will get underway and get a full complement of races, or as full a complement as has been possible after the cancellation, of course, of the Superpole race this weekend. these are moments where you want to call on experience.
What's interesting is on our timing screens, you can see there at the bottom of the screen it's saying drops of water in sectors 1 and 4. We actually don't have anything on our timing screens now to say drops of rain in any of the sectors. We do get that any time that there's rain, so we are still waiting to see an update. There you go. Well, there is still some rain falling down there in the back end of the circuit.
Yes, so presumably still in the same 4 sectors that the notification came from. That was a close-up shot of a puddle, and even your ability to recognise corners, I don't think you'd be able to manage it with just a close-up of a puddle. But as Pere Riba stalks away from the grid, these are more nervous moments for the riders, particularly those involved in this championship fight, of course.
Yeah, and it is interesting to see that the rain does seem to have pushed away from the start line. We don't seem to have anything outside of our commentary box, so that would be pushed towards the beaches down at turn 10. So you can see from the crowd in the hillsides here that they've all got their umbrellas up. We've seen everyone out with their Macs on as well now, so everyone just trying to keep themselves as dry as possible. But certainly if we do have more rain coming down, that's always to the advantage. You can see for Jonathan Rea, just maybe a change of helmet there, maybe changing to a slightly less smoked visor there as well on the grid.
Notice the 3-minute board was still being shown at the side there on the starting grid, and the countdown was still going at 2.5 minutes as well. So not sure whether there's anything to read into that, as the riders seem to be preparing themselves as best as possible at very least.
Yeah, you can see Jonathan Rea put his helmet back on, Chaz Davis putting his gloves back on, so maybe the riders just making sure they're able to keep themselves ready. I did see some mechanics go out with new tyres onto the grid, and some of them, Van der Mark's BMW crew, they've come back into pit lane with those tyres, so they're not making a change on the grid at this stage.
At very least, that rainfall is a reminder that at any stage during this race we could get a little bit of rain that could throw the championship destination and destiny into doubt. Razgat Lioglu might lead by 30 points at the moment, but there's a potential 25-point swing ahead of us, and we get rain in dry conditions, and perhaps Toprak leading might be the first one to encounter it.
Yeah, and looking on the grid there, you can see the riders have started their bikes, and everyone making their way off, so the teams might have been given some information that we're still waiting for up in the commentary box, but it does look like we're about to get underway. Yes,
did notice that the countdown was still going at the side of the grid, so we wait for official confirmation, but in the meanwhile the next board is shown, so it does look as though at 5 past the hour we will be able to start to build up towards finally going racing. And it has been, I say finally, advisedly as well, not because of the delay this morning, but because, of course, we were supposed to be getting underway 20 hours earlier than what we have yesterday afternoon, when the wet weather was just too much for us to be able to get underway with racing. Toprak has a little glance across to the camera to his side. He knows that all of the cameras, all of the focus, all the attention is on him this weekend. And Jonathan Rea and Pere Riba as well have been emphasising since the very beginning of this weekend, the pressure's not on us.
Well, let's put a bit of focus and concentration on Jonathan Rea. He's out there on the X tyre, it looks like. So he's out there in the super soft compound tyre. The Yamaha have Toprak Razgatlioglu and Scott Redding on the front row with the Ducati. They're both out there on the zero tyre. So Jonathan Rea does have a softer tyre, and we'll see how that reacts over the course of what will now be a 20-lap race.
Yes, so Rea looking for a better start, a better run in the early stages, perhaps to try and lead it from the front, to try and control this race, and then later on might have to think about defending position, perhaps.
Toprak with a big moment on the run into turn 1 here, even on the siding lap, and you saw he got boxed out a little bit by Axel Bassani and then has to run off, so already a big warning there for Toprak, and we'll see how everyone is on the siding lap. But for Jonathan Rea, we know he's a fast start. He'll also know that this is a track where track position is key, so you've got to make sure you're able to hit the front and stay at the front.
Wouldn't be the first time that we've seen a rider have a drama on a warm-up, on a sighting lap, would it?
Yeah, mechanics going back onto the grid, so we're not going to have a race.
Gerloff and Bassani coming into race 2, the last race of 2021 in the Battle of the Top Independents. Bassani was the top-performing independent rider there in race 1. That's why you'll see him down in Parc Ferme. Michael van der Mark, Alvaro Bautista, Chaz Davies recovering for 8th, Tati Mercado with a strong top 10 finish in P9, and Tom Sykes gradually tumbling backwards. He eventually finishes in 10th place, and remember his teammate Michael van der Mark there holding on for 6th. But as far as the championship is concerned, Toprak Razgatlioglu moves on to 551 points. Heartwarming moment as ever. You've got to be just as gracious in defeat as you are as a champion, and Jonathan Rea is proving that.
You might have to be. Some riders aren't, and Jonathan going around there and offering congratulations to everyone in Yamaha and Toprak's corner, and certainly there's been a good relationship between Toprak and Rea over the course of this championship battle. Not too sure it's always been the case between Yamaha and Kawasaki, but on today it's really Yamaha's day and Toprak's day.
Yes, I'm glad it's ended in the way that it has, in a sporting way, in a racing way, with Jonathan Rea getting to the front and battling, and Razgatlioglu fighting, and all of the positions changing in those podium places, and no dramas. There were a couple of moments where they got very close, but in the end, that's a fair reflection of the season. Both aggressive, and Scott Redding in the fight as well. Both aggressive at the head of the field, Rea and Razgatlioglu. Actually, it was a clean race.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those ones that was a microcosm of the season. Jonathan Rea and Toprak just having that little bit of an edge over Scott Redding when push came to shove. And certainly race 2 is going to be interesting. All these riders free just to go out and battle with one another, see what happens out there.
How hard is this going to be for Jonathan Rea to accept? It's not a position he's been in before, of course. When he was beaten previously, he hadn't yet been a world champion. Once he finally got to the top of the tree, once he made the switch to Kawasaki machinery, he's never been anything other than world champion on green machines, and that changes in 2021.
Well, to be honest, this could be good for Jonathan Rea. Could give him that extra motivation for the winter and next season as well. It's hard to maintain that focus and that determination year after year, and he's done that for most of this season, but it was his mistakes that were the difference between winning and losing this championship for him.
Yes, inevitably, being at the final round, we're going to look at the results of this final round as though they were determinants in the championship, but the reality is race 2, Donington Park, race 1 in Most, even race 2 of the Catalunya round, the first 2 races of Portimao, the circuit where he was supposed to be making that big late season push, that both of those races went away from him from leading positions. Those are the races that Rea will have to look back at as the cause of this defeat.
Yeah, and I think especially Portimao, because he had built himself up so much for that round. He's had so much success there in the past, crashed out of the lead in both of the opening races before winning race 2 in the Sunday afternoon, and that's going to be one of those moments he looks back on. Obviously in Donington Park and Most, you're pushing hard to try and win those races, you're battling in those leading positions, and ultimately they were mistakes as well from him. And obviously even that second crash in Most as well, that was very costly. 2 crashes in the same race, and if he had been able to score some points in that, it might have changed the complexion heading into the final weekend of the season.
And by contrast, Razgatlioglu, world champion, despite misfortune, despite adversity as well. Remember Aragon, Jonathan Rea went 1-1-2, Razgatlioglu 3-6-6, and at that point you wouldn't have even thought that in your wildest dreams that he'd be world champion come the end of the season. And then Razgatlioglu, who's survived his own misfortune, race 2 in Assen, wiped out by Garrett Gerloff, mechanical failure from the podium places at the Catalunya round, the 9th round of the season, a race 2 retirement in Portimao that seemed to reignite the title fight. Despite all of that adversity, Razgatlioglu recovering each time he's gone behind by more than 30 points on 3 occasions, and eventually leads it by 25 with 1 race remaining.
Well, recovery is the big thing for Toprak, because if you think back even an hour ago, as we made our way for the siding lap, Toprak had a huge moment into turn 1 after running over a wet curb. Around about 25 minutes later, he had a massive moment into turn 15 when that rear end stepped out. So he's been able to keep himself cool despite making some mechanical problems during the course of the season, a few other incidents, and then even in the title deciding race, to have those moments and still be willing to push on to make the move on Scott Redding to clinch the crown right now. It shows the type of rider he is.
Hollywood might have taken it to the final race, but I think that's about all they could have done to outdo what's been a wonderful 2021 season in World SBK. Let's now hear from our podium trio, starting with 3rd place man, Scott Redding.
Scott, how many times have we seen you 3 go at it this season already? Another extraordinary battle. Tell us about your race, please.
Yeah, the race was good. Start wasn't great. There was a bit of confusion on the start, and then made a good break to the first corner. And then it was who could figure out the condition the quickest, so I was kind of happy to sit back a little bit. I dropped back, and I came back again, playing with the mapping, because conditions that we're not used to this weekend, really. So it was quite tough. Then it was just battle on, battle as much as you can. I put up a fight for a long time, but this weekend I've struggled a little bit with the feeling of the bike in the long runs. Not so bad, but to fight at the end's difficult. So, you know, in the last 2 laps I tried, but there was just nothing left. which means we've got something to work on for race 2, and yeah, recover and go again.
Congratulations, Scott.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Full respect to Scott Redding as well. It would be easy once his decision was made and once he knew he was moving on to BMW machinery for podium position. Chaz getting through for 8th position in race 1, and we do hope to see him sign off on his World SBK career in style. It's going to be a lot of emotion and a lot of side stories that will be the focus later on in race number 2, now that the World Championship itself is settled in favour of Toprak Razgatlioglu. We saw him gracious in defeat and congratulating his rivals. Jonathan Ray's reign is at an end. 6 world titles, but not another in 2021.
Johnny, another extraordinary race for himself. You did what was in your hands and in difficult conditions. You come out here with a race win.
Yeah, that was the target. You know, coming here, try to win races, enjoy myself, go home with a good feeling, and we certainly did that today. But today's not about me; it's about Toprak and his team. They did an incredible job this year. They deserve this championship. So yeah, just last words, congratulations to them, and look forward to race 2 and to go home and get ready for next season.
Congratulations, John.
Looks a very emotional man, Jonathan Ray.
Yeah, December 15th, though, is the day he's going to be thinking about more than anything else. That's the first day of 2022 for Jonathan Ray and the Kawasaki racing team. They'll be down in Jerez testing in the south of Spain, and certainly they're going to look to try and find just those small bits of improvement that they need, because it is really small margins that they need to find to be able to bring that fight back to Toprak and Yamaha. It's been such a closely matched season between Ray and Razgatlioglu. That's why he's emotional down in Park Ferme.
The reality is that Jonathan Ray will be glad that Toprak Razgatlioglu is not moving away from this paddock, that he gets another crack at him in 2022.
I'll tell you what, I'm glad that Toprak's not moving away. You want to be able to see another year of a battle like that.
I'm not sure about that, Laurel, but he's going to be getting another one soon. He is your 2021 world champion, Toprak Razgatlioglu.
Toprak, what is it to say? You've been telling us about this dream all season long. Do it the final day of the season. You are World Superbike champion.
First, I say thank you very much, my family and Kenan Sofolu, because we are a big family, and thanks to my team, the incredible job this year. And sometimes we are crushed, sometimes the good race, and we are here. I'm really happy. For me, very special day today, because this race, this champion for my dad, because this is my dream always, and because he's not here, he's died, but I feeling he is watching. I'm really happy, and incredible day for me, and we are champion. Thank you very much, every people, and thanks to the world. I'm tired, and I'm shining a little bit.
Still got a race, mate. Huge congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I think he ran out of words at the end of that interview, Toprak. A mentor to some degree a few years ago when Toprak first burst into the World Superbike scene, but these days very much Kenan Sofoglu, who's masterminding the operations as far as bringing through Turkish riders to the elite.
Yeah, and Kenan's made a big difference for Toprak, but you need the talent to be able to come to the fore like Toprak has, and he's been noted for 7 years as that talented rider coming through from the Stock 600 class into Stock 1000 onto a Superbike, and then making the steps forward from that point onwards. And over the course of the last few years, he's really become his own man as he's grown older and gained that experience and the confidence that comes from winning races.
And whatever happens from here on in, Toprak Razgatlioglu, world champion now in 2021, whether he now moves on to MotoGP in some years in the future, or whether he stays here and carves out his own legend and chases down Jonathan Ray's records in the Superbike World Championship, he is a product of the Superbike World Championship.
Yeah, the one thing about it is you can't take any titles away once they're given out, and Toprak is a world champion, and like you said, Alex, coming from the Superbike paddock shows that there is talent that comes through here. We've seen that as well in recent years. Manuel Gonzalez, of course, switching over to Moto2 after a couple of years in Supersport and winning a 300 title. Toprak coming up through the ranks. Rinaldi came up through the ranks at the same time as Toprak in the Stock 600, Stock 1000 class before moving on to a Superbike.
Can't take a title away. You mean there were no track limits on that last lap? That would have been a way to get us an extra race, wouldn't it? Making their way onto the podium then, the same 3 that have dominated throughout this 2021 campaign. And they will be world at number 3, 2 and 1 as well. Toprak with the gold get-up making his way to take second position. It's his 29th podium of this 2021 campaign. I'm sure he'll be gunning for number 30, and he'll be aiming for the top step of the podium this afternoon as well. But the race winner, and as I said previously, 1:11, the 12th victory of 2021 for Jonathan Rea. Rea steps up, 21st different circuit, as I said previously, that he's managed to win at. He's got a good record down the years for new circuits as well.
He's got a good record down the years for pretty much everything, Jonathan Rea, and that's what's made him the rider everyone had to aim for in recent years. But now it's Toprak that's going to have the target on his back.
And that target is going to be big and bold as far as Jonathan Rea is concerned. If there was ever a situation of complacency, that'll be long gone. This winter is going to be like something out of a Rocky movie for Jonathan Rea, I'm sure. Yeah,
Jonathan's going to be on a countdown until the start of the next season, a countdown until December 15, his first time back on track with Kawasaki in that winter test. And certainly he's going to be focused on maximising everything he has to try and bring the fight back to Toprak next year.
This is going to be more sweet and sour than your Chinese last night, Steve, for Jonathan Rea up on the top step of the podium. Can't really celebrate, though, that when you've just lost a world title, it's going to be a difficult moment for him.
Well, the one thing for Jonathan is he's also known that this moment was potentially coming for quite a while during the course of this season. He said that this has been a strange season. He hasn't tried to plan out any championship celebrations. He's just been focusing on the job at hand. He knew the task ahead of him, and ultimately you can see there just the stresses of 7 years of having that pressure on your shoulders. It's actually could be a little bit of a release for Jonathan as well. Really gives him a new focus for the next couple of years as well.
Well, what's the challenge now? Beat Toprak next year and sail off into the sunset as the greatest of all time? Sounds good, doesn't it?
Well, he's already down as the greatest of all time. We'll wait and see what happens next year.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please, your respect to the national anthem of the winning rider, the national anthem of Great Britain.
And your national anthem for your race-winning manufacturer, Kawasaki.
Congratulations to the top three. It's now time for Prosecco.
Jonathan Rea then is your race winner, but Toprak Razgatlioglu, and with a race to spare, is your 2021 world title winner. But a further reminder of just how closely matched the two of them have been over the course of this season. It's podium number 29 for both Razgatlioglu and Rea. It is win number 12 for Jonathan Rea compared to 13 for Razgatlioglu. And he'll be going to try and match Toprak later on this afternoon. 25 points between them. That's less than a point per race in favour of Toprak as he seals the 2021 world title. Toprak, as is customary, making his way away for the celebrations with the Prosecco, but he will be back, and when he is back, we'll be awarding him the 2021 World Champion Trophy, and that'll be a special moment for all concerned.
Yeah, for Toprak, for the team, and for everyone involved. It is going to be a special moment, and you can see for Jonathan Rea there on the top step of the podium, like you said, Alex, it's going to be a bittersweet moment in some ways, but certainly for Rea, the respect that he has for Toprak will probably mean that if he was going to give it up to anyone, he probably would have wanted to see Toprak be that rider.
Music down by the paddock show sounds like something straight from last night's Bike Week Lombok party on the beachfront, and I'm sure there'll be a little bit more of that this evening, particularly if your name is Toprak Razgatlioglu. Still a small matter of another race to come yet, and we're all looking forward to that. So that's your podium trio for race 1 of the first Indonesian round since 1997, the 2021 Pirelli Indonesian round. And your race winner, Jonathan Rea, ahead of Toprak Razgatlioglu and Scott Redding. Another podium finish for Scott Redding. Only one race since race 2 of the Catalunya round in which he hasn't been on the podium. He's had the consistency, he's had the pace, but he's also had too many drop points earlier on in the campaign. Yeah,
unfortunately for Ducati, it's another year, 3 in a row for them with the V4R, where we've seen them have that pace and find consistency at different times, but not over the course of a full 13-round season. We've seen Jonathan Rea for the last 7 years able to do that. Toprak this year able to do it as well, and that's the challenge for Ducati, just to get that all-round package.
Yes, the Manufacturers' Championship actually goes to the final race this afternoon, mathematically speaking at least. Very difficult to see how Ducati could recover 20 points. They're going to need Scott Redding to win it, and they're going to need misfortune to fall Toprak, Locatelli, and of course Garrett Gerloff, among others. But it is Toprak Razgatlioglu who is the man in focus. The Pata Yamaha outfit also now guaranteed the Teams Award in 2021. So 2 of our title races settled. And the biggest one of all is the 2021 Riders World Championship. Toprak Razgatlioglu is the man who receives the trophy. As I've said previously, the end of an era in the Superbike World Championship. Jonathan Rea defeated at last, and you might have felt at some stages that that day would never come. But Toprak Razgatlioglu ends the reign of Jonathan Rea to become 2021 Motul FIM Superbike World Champion. Claims his first race victory of 2021. Toprak Razgatlioglu has made an absolute blinder. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Toprak Razgatlioglu makes it 2 victories from the UK round, and you have a new championship leader. Oh, he's collected Toprak Razgatlioglu. Into turn 20 comes Toprak Razgatlioglu. It's going to be Toprak Razgatlioglu. Razgatlioglu now slings it down the inside of Rea. Rea clashes with Razgatlioglu. Oh, the 2 of them are going to clash. Razgatlioglu barges into the side of Jonathan Rea. And we have a new professor of Portimao. Rea's reign is over. Razgatlioglu is 2021 World Champion. 2 men with goosebumps, I think, up here in the commentary position. It has been one of those epic seasons that you feel you're making history, so I can only imagine how it feels for Toprak.
Yeah, the whole way through this season, you knew you were witnessing something very special in the World SBK paddock. Just that highlights video shows how many close calls there were between Rea and Razgatlioglu. And when you watch it back, it almost feels like a miracle that there wasn't a big moment between them, a big instant, but it shows just how talented both riders are. They always were able to react to one another and live to fight another day, and that's why we had, probably for me, the best bar-to-bar racing I've ever seen between 2 title contenders over a prolonged period.
Let's hope that we get another barnstormer this afternoon to sign off. Nothing in it as far as the Riders World Championship podium positions are concerned. Scott Redding already couldn't be caught for 3rd. Jonathan Rea has guaranteed himself silver, although that's not the colour he would have wanted anyway. And Toprak Razgatlioglu is now guaranteed gold. Manufacturers' Championship is the only one to play for, and that sees a 20-point margin in favour of Yamaha over Ducati. So they too are going to need miracles now this afternoon in order to reverse that deficit. Things looking settled, so we can just enjoy 15 finishers, all of them scoring, including Kota Nazane further down the order, 5th. Manufacturers' Championship, the only one still up for grabs then. Ducati trail by 20, but it's only the top scoring individual rider from each manufacturer that counts. So they're going to need a 20-point swing, and it's most likely Scott Redding who'll be called into service to try and take victory for them this afternoon. Independent Riders' Championship. This Independent Teams Championship already decided at the end of the Argentinian round in favour of GRT. The 55 points from Kota Nazane helping teammate Garrett Gerloff. Moto Corsa and Team Go 11, of course, both relying on just one rider, Chaz Davies for Go 11, as well as Loris Baz when he substituted. And for Moto Corsa, Axel Bassani, who's done a wonderful job, frankly, on his own. The Hyundai-inspired rider, Alvaro Bautista, 8 up on Axel Bassani. And Bassani in that race, of course, starting in 7th position, 1 ahead of Alvaro Bautista. And Bassani ending up finishing in 5th place after Locatelli passed him for 4th on the final lap. So just the 38th and final race of the 2021 Superbikes.
Five-time champion. And here round of applause.